The morning Sarah Chen walked into the Galactic Council chamber for the first time, she felt like a child entering a cathedral. The walls stretched up so high she could barely see the ceiling. Beings from 100 different worlds sat in curved rows, their bodies strange and wonderful. Some had scales that shimmered like oil on water. Others floated in tanks of purple liquid. A few looked almost human, except for the extra arms or the eyes that glowed softly in the dim light. Sarah represented Earth. She was a captain, a scientist, and now a diplomat. She wore her uniform carefully pressed, her dark hair pulled back in a neat bun. Her hands shook slightly as she carried the tablet containing humanity's introduction to this vast community of stars. "Approach, representative of Earth," a voice said. It came from everywhere and nowhere. Sarah later learned it was translated directly into her brain by tiny machines the Council had given her. She walked forward. Her footsteps echoed. Every eye, every sensor, every unknown organ of perception turned toward her. "We are the Galactic Council," the voice continued. "We have observed your species for 10 of your years. We have studied your culture, your technology, your nature. We have made our determination." Sarah's heart pounded. This was it. Humanity's first real moment on the galactic stage. Would they be accepted? Rejected, destroyed. Earth is classified as a protected, innocent world. The chamber erupted in sounds. Chirps, whistles, low rumbles that Sarah felt in her bones. She didn't know if it was approval or mockery. She didn't even fully understand what the classification meant. An alien approached her. It looked like a tall insect covered in soft blue fur, with 4 arms and enormous eyes. "I am Velthra," it said gently. "Do not be afraid. Protected innocent is a rare and honored status. It means your species has achieved space travel through cooperation and curiosity, rather than through conflict and conquest." "That's good, right?" Sarah asked. Velthra made a sound like wind chimes. Sarah would learn this was laughter. "Very good. It means you are special. Most species reach the stars covered in the blood of their own kind. Humans are different. You have no weapons on your ships. Your vessels are designed only to explore and learn. Your people work together without the harsh hierarchies that plague most civilizations. You are innocent of the galaxy's darkness." Sarah smiled, relief flooding through her. "We just want to learn, to be part of something bigger. And you shall be." Velthra said, "My people, the Arxians, will be your guides and protectors. We will teach you the ways of the Council. We will keep you safe." Over the following months, humanity became the Council's favorite curiosity. Aliens visited Earth constantly, marveling at human art, human music, human stories. They found human emotions fascinating, the way humans could cry from joy or sadness, the way they formed deep bonds with animals and even with plants. Ambassador Marcus Webb, Earth's senior diplomat, spent his days giving tours and presentations. He showed alien dignitaries human paintings, played them symphonies, let them taste chocolate and coffee and wine. The aliens were enchanted. "Your species is so creative," one ambassador said, "a being made of crystal that rang like a bell when it spoke. You make beauty for the sake of beauty. Most of us stopped doing that millions of years ago." Marcus smiled proudly. "We believe art and science are 2 sides of the same coin. Both are about understanding the universe and our place in it." But not everyone viewed humanity with such warmth. In the shadows of the Council, other powers watched and calculated. The Kryn Empire, a vast domain of conquest and subjugation, had representatives at every council meeting. They said little, but they watched everything. Commander Zekthar of the Kryn studied the reports on humanity with cold interest. His species looked like massive reptiles covered in red and black scales with teeth like daggers. The Kryn respected only strength, and they saw none in humanity. "Protected innocence," Zekthar muttered to his aide. "Weak, defenseless. When the time comes, they will be easy to harvest." "The Council forbids aggression against protected species," his aide reminded him carefully. Zekthar's laugh was a low growl. "The Council forbids many things. But the Council is old and slow. They talk while we act. Patience. First we deal with more immediate threats, but one day Earth will be ripe for taking." Sarah knew nothing of these dark observations. She was too busy with her work. Her ship, the Curiosity, had been upgraded with alien technology. It could now travel between stars in days instead of decades. Her crew spent their time exploring, cataloging new worlds, and making friends everywhere they went. "Captain, look at this," her science officer called out one day. They were orbiting a moon covered in strange crystalline formations. "These structures are artificial," Ancient, millions of years old. Sarah studied the readings. Can we learn anything about who built them? Maybe, but we'd need help. The technology is beyond anything we understand. Sarah contacted the Arxian fleet. Within hours, a massive ship appeared beside the Curiosity. It was 10 times larger, covered in elegant curves and glowing panels. Arxian scientists came aboard and worked alongside the human crew, sharing knowledge freely. This was the pattern of humanity's early years in the galaxy. They explored, they discovered, they shared, and they were protected by the older, wiser species who found them delightful and pure. Back on Earth, schools taught children about the hundreds of alien species. Museums displayed gifts from distant worlds. Humanity felt safe, welcomed, and valued. The idea of conflict seemed absurd. Why would anyone fight when there was so much universe to explore together? Ambassador Webb stood before the Council 1 year after first contact and gave a speech that would be remembered, though not in the way he intended. "People of the galaxy," he said, his voice steady and proud, "humanity thanks you for this gift of fellowship. We come to the stars not as conquerors but as students. We have left behind the petty conflicts of our past. We have chosen cooperation over competition, dialogue over violence. We hope to learn from your ancient wisdom and perhaps offer our own small contributions of creativity and enthusiasm. Together we can build a future where all species thrive in peace." The Council applauded. Velthra approached Marcus afterward. Her blue fur rippling with what he had learned was pleasure. "A beautiful sentiment, Ambassador. Your people truly are unique." "We're just glad to be here," Marcus said honestly. "Treasure this innocence," Velthra said softly. "It is rarer than you know." Marcus didn't understand the sadness in her voice. He would eventually. Meanwhile, at the edges of known space, the Kryn Empire was moving. Their fleets gathered like storm clouds. They had violated 3 minor treaties already, testing the Council's response. The response was predictable. Strongly worded messages and empty threats. The Council had not fought a real war in 10,000 years. They had forgotten how. Their weapons were museum pieces. Their tactics were theoretical. They believed that civilization had evolved beyond such barbarism. The Kryn knew better. They understood that peace was merely the space between wars, and that space was closing. But none of this touched Earth yet. Sarah Chen continued her explorations. Marcus Webb continued his diplomacy. Humanity continued to grow and learn under the protective wings of their new friends. They were innocent, protected, safe, for now. The emergency session began without ceremony. Sarah Chen sat in the observation gallery, watching as hundreds of council representatives filed into the chamber in silence. Something was very wrong. She could feel it in the air, thick and heavy like smoke. Velthra stood at the center podium, her usually bright blue fur now dull and flat. When she spoke, her voice carried none of its usual musical quality. "The Arxian colony of Termoth has fallen," she announced. The Kryn Empire attacked without warning. 3 million souls lived there. Now there are none. The chamber erupted. Some delegates shouted in anger. Others made sounds of grief that Sarah had never heard before. A few simply sat in shocked silence. Sarah felt cold. She had visited Termoth 6 months ago. She remembered children playing in bioluminescent gardens, artists crafting sculptures from living crystal. Scientists who had shown her wonder she couldn't begin to explain. All gone. "This is an outrage," someone shouted. "The Kryn must be punished." "We must convene the War Committee," another voice called. "What War Committee?" a third voice asked. "We disbanded it 7,000 years ago." Sarah listened as the council argued. They talked about protocols, about procedures, about committees that needed to be reformed, and authorities that needed to be granted. They talked and talked while more reports came in. Another world attacked, another colony burning. The Kryn were not just raiding, they were conquering, and they were moving fast. Ambassador Webb found Sarah after the session. His face was gray with worry. "They're not ready for this," he said quietly. "The council. They've lived in peace for so long, they've forgotten what war actually means." "What do we do?" Sarah asked. "We stay out of it. We're protected innocents, remember? The council will handle this and we'll be kept safe." But Marcus didn't sound convinced. The Kryn advanced like a tide. They hit worlds with overwhelming force, enslaved the populations, and moved on. The council scrambled to respond. Ancient warships were pulled from storage, but half of them didn't work anymore. Crews that had trained for combat only in simulations suddenly faced real death. The Arxians, humanity's protectors, assembled their fleet to defend their remaining colonies. Sarah watched from Earth as the ships departed, massive and beautiful, covered in artwork and carrying the hopes of a peaceful people forced to fight. The battle lasted 6 hours. The Arxian fleet was destroyed. Velthra survived. She returned to Earth in a damaged escape pod, her ship and her crew gone. Sarah met her at the landing site. The Arxian leader looked smaller somehow, broken. "I'm so sorry," Sarah said, not knowing what else to offer. "We were not warriors," Velthra said quietly. "We remembered the shapes of war, but not the substance. The Kryn tore through us like paper, and now—" She looked up at Sarah with huge liquid eyes. "Now we cannot protect you. The Kryn are coming to the core worlds. Earth is on their path." The council convened again. This time the discussion was about evacuation. Protected innocent worlds were to be abandoned, their populations relocated to safer regions of space. Marcus Webb stood before the council and asked the question that changed everything. "What if we don't want to evacuate?" The chamber fell silent. "Ambassador Webb," Velthra said gently, "your species has no military, no weapons, no concept of organized warfare. If the Kryn reach Earth, your people will be slaughtered or enslaved. We cannot protect you, but we can save you. Please be reasonable." "Let us protect ourselves," Marcus said. Laughter rippled through the chamber. Not cruel laughter, but the kind directed at a child saying something foolish. "With what?" someone asked. "Your exploration ships? Your mining equipment?" "With whatever we have," Marcus replied firmly. "Ambassador," Velthra said, her voice heavy with sadness. "We know your species. You are innocent. You have never known war. You don't understand what you're asking." "Then help us understand," Marcus said. "Give us access to your military archives, your tactical databases. Let us learn." "No," the council voted nearly unanimously. "Protected innocent species must remain innocent. We will evacuate Earth within 30 days. Marcus returned to Earth with the news. Sarah met him at the landing facility. "They said no," Marcus confirmed. "They're sending transport ships to evacuate major population centers. They estimate they can save maybe 2 billion people before the Kryn arrive." 2 billion out of 10, Sarah said. The weight of it crushed down on her. "What about the rest?" "They're sorry about that," Marcus said bitterly. Sarah looked up at the stars. Somewhere up there the Kryn were coming, ships full of monsters who saw humans as prey, and the council, the great and ancient council, had decided that humanity should run. "No," Sarah said. "No, no." Sarah's voice grew stronger. "I'm not running. Earth is our home. We don't abandon our home. Sarah, we have no weapons, no training, no chance. Then we learn, fast." Sarah pulled out her tablet and started typing. "I'm sending a message to the Curiosity. We're coming back to Earth and we're bringing something with us." "What?" Marcus asked. "The truth." 3 days later, the crew of the Curiosity returned to Earth. They carried with them data from human archives, records that had been carefully edited during first contact with the aliens, history files, war records, military doctrines spanning thousands of years. Sarah called a meeting with Earth's government. Military advisors who had been relegated to ceremonial roles suddenly found themselves pulled into urgent conferences. Historians specializing in human conflict became the most important people on the planet. "When we met the council," Sarah explained to the assembled leaders, "we showed them who we wanted to be. A peaceful species that had moved beyond violence. And that's true. We did move beyond it, but we didn't forget it." She pulled up a hologram. Battle plans from ancient Earth wars. Strategies and tactics refined over millennia of human conflict. Sun Tzu, Clausewitz. Modern military theory from the 21st and 22nd centuries before humanity had achieved true peace. "We chose peace," Sarah continued. "But our ancestors knew war very, very well, and they wrote everything down." "Are you suggesting," the Secretary General asked slowly, "that we fight?" "I'm suggesting we don't die quietly," Sarah said. "The council thinks we're helpless. The Kryn think we're prey. Maybe they're right. Maybe we'll lose. But maybe, just maybe, humanity has one more trick to show the galaxy." The decision was made in 24 hours. Earth would not evacuate. Earth would stand. The council was horrified when they received Earth's message. Velthra personally contacted Marcus. "Please," she begged, "don't do this. We've lost so many already. Don't make us watch humanity die too." We appreciate your concern, Marcus said formally. But this is our choice. It's suicide, Velthra said. Maybe, Marcus acknowledged. But it's our suicide. We choose this. Earth transformed overnight. Factories that made consumer goods retooled to manufacture something else. Scientists who studied exoplanets turned their attention to weapons theory. Ships designed for exploration were torn apart and rebuilt. The council watched in confusion as humans used words they'd never spoken before. Terms like strategic depth and force, multiplication and theater of operations. They were speaking a language the galaxy hadn't heard in 10,000 years. The language of Sarah stood on the bridge of the Curiosity, now renamed the Defiance. Her crew worked around her, installing systems that would have been unthinkable months ago. Weapons, armor, tactical computers running scenarios of death and survival. Captain, her weapons officer said. It was a new position, filled by a woman who had been a civilian engineer last week. We're ready. Good, Sarah said. Because they're here. The sensors showed it clearly. A Kryn fleet, 100 ships strong, entering the outer solar system, coming for Earth, coming for humanity, coming to teach the innocent a lesson. They had no idea what they were about to learn. Commander Zekthar watched Earth through the viewing screen of his flagship. The blue and green planet hung in space like a jewel waiting to be plucked. Around him, his officers prepared for what should be the easiest conquest of the campaign. 100 ships against a defenseless world, his tactical officer said with satisfaction. This will be over in hours. Zekthar nodded. He had read the reports on humanity. No weapons, no military tradition. A species that solved disputes through discussion and compromise. Protected innocents, the council called them. The Kryn had another word for such species. Victims. Send the standard surrender demand, Zekthar ordered. Give them 1 hour to submit. Then we begin the harvest. The message was transmitted. Zekthar expected pleading, perhaps tears and desperate bargaining. Instead, he received something unexpected. This is Captain Sarah Chen of Earth Defense. Your demand is denied. Leave our system immediately or face the consequences. His bridge crew laughed. Consequences? From humans? Reply that we will show them what consequences truly mean, Zekthar ordered. All ships advanced to attack formation. The Kryn fleet moved forward in a wedge pattern, a formation that had broken 100 worlds. Their ships were massive, covered in weapons and armor. They moved with the confidence of predators who had never met anything that could threaten them. Sarah watched them come. Her hands were steady on the controls of the Defiance, though her heart hammered in her chest. Around her, a fleet of 70 human ships waited. They were smaller than the Kryn vessels, less powerful, but they had something the Kryn didn't expect. Experience that stretched back 10,000 years. All ships, Sarah transmitted. Remember the plan. Don't try to match their strength. Use speed. Use deception. Make them chase you. Understood, Captain, came the replies. The Kryn reached firing range and opened up with massive energy cannons. Beams of superheated plasma lanced across space. 3 human ships exploded immediately, their shields overwhelmed. But the rest scattered. On the Kryn flagship, Zekthar frowned. The human ships weren't forming up to fight. They were running in all directions. This was expected. Prey ran when hunters came. But these ships weren't just fleeing randomly. They were moving with purpose in patterns that seemed almost... Sir, his tactical officer said, they're hurting us. Impossible. They have no training and an explosion rocked the flagship. Alarms blared. Zekthar grabbed his chair to avoid falling. What was that? Mines, sir. We've entered a minefield. How did they deploy mines? We were watching them the entire approach. Sarah smiled grimly as she watched 3 Kryn ships crippled by the minefield. The mines weren't actually mines. They were cargo containers filled with explosives, painted to match the background radiation of space, floating in patterns that the Kryn sensors couldn't distinguish from debris. Simple, crude, effective. All ships. Phase 2, Sarah ordered. The human vessels that had scattered now began to converge, but not on the main Kryn fleet. They targeted the supply ships in the rear, the lightly armed vessels that carried fuel and ammunition. Zekthar watched in growing fury as his support fleet took damage. They're targeting our logistics. How do they know to target logistics? His officers had no answer. Protected innocents weren't supposed to understand military strategy. But these humans moved like veterans, exploiting every weakness, avoiding every strength. All ships break formation. Pursue and destroy those pests. The Kryn fleet split up exactly as Sarah had planned. Concentrated, the Kryn were unstoppable. Divided, they were just targets. Lead them to the belt, Sarah ordered. The Defiance accelerated toward the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Behind her, 20 Kryn ships followed, their commanders eager for the kill. They thought the human captain was fleeing in panic. They were wrong. Sarah's ship dove into the dense field of tumbling rocks. Her crew had spent 2 weeks mapping safe routes through the belt. The Kryn had no such maps. Light them up, Sarah said calmly. The human ships that had been hiding among the asteroids opened fire, not with advanced energy weapons but with simple mass drivers. Chunks of metal and rock accelerated to tremendous speeds, turned into bullets by velocity alone. The asteroids themselves became weapons. Human ships used small explosives to alter orbits, sending car-sized rocks crashing into Kryn hulls. Zekthar lost 5 ships in the belt before he ordered a retreat. His remaining 15 vessels pulled back. Regrouping with the main fleet. Status, he demanded. 23 ships damaged, 7 destroyed, 4 more crippled and unable to fight, his tactical officer reported. The humans have lost 18 ships. Zekthar's claws dug into his armrests. 7 ships lost to primitive humans? Impossible, shameful, but real. They're not running anymore, his sensor officer said. On the screen, the remaining human ships were forming up into a tight formation, positioning themselves between the Kryn fleet and Earth. They're going to make a stand, Zekthar said. Good, now we crush them properly. But as the Kryn advanced, something strange happened. Small objects began launching from Earth itself. Hundreds of them, thousands, what are those? Zekthar demanded. Missiles, sir. Primitive rocket technology with basic guidance systems. But there are so many. The swarm hit. Individually, each missile was weak. But there were 5,000 of them. More firepower than any Kryn commander had ever seen deployed at once. They overwhelmed point defenses, crashed into hulls, detonated against shields, and while the Kryn fleet dealt with the missile swarm, the human ships attacked again. This time they came in small groups, 3 or 4 ships working together. They used the Kryn fleet's own size against them, darting between the massive vessels, firing at weak points that human engineers had identified by studying captured Kryn technology. Zekthar watched his fleet take damage and realized with cold horror what was happening. Humans weren't inexperienced. They were experts who had chosen not to use their expertise. And now that they had no choice, all that hidden knowledge was coming out. Fall back, he ordered. All ships retreat to the outer system. We need to regroup. As the Kryn fleet pulled back, humanity's ships let them go. They didn't pursue. They returned to Earth orbit, battered and bleeding, having lost 1/3 of their fleet. But they had won. On the bridge of the Defiance, Sarah slumped in her chair. Around her, her crew was cheering, crying, hugging each other. They had survived. Earth had survived, Captain, her communications officer said. We're being hailed. It's the Galactic Council. Sarah straightened up. Put them through. Velthra's face appeared on the screen. The Arxian looked shocked, her eyes wide, her fur standing on end. Captain Chen, she said slowly. What did you do? We defended our home, Sarah replied. You defeated a Kryn fleet. A protected innocent species with no military capability just defeated the Kryn. We're not as innocent as you thought, Sarah said quietly. Velthra was silent for a long moment. No, she finally said. I suppose you're not. Captain, I need to ask you something very important. How? How did you learn to fight like that? Sarah took a deep breath. We didn't learn it. We remembered it. Humanity wasn't always peaceful, Velthra. We spent thousands of years fighting each other. We got very, very good at war. We just chose to stop. Why didn't you tell us? Because we wanted to be better, Sarah said. We wanted to leave that part of our history behind. We came to the stars hoping we'd never need those skills again. But when you gave us no choice, she gestured at the battlefield around them. We remembered who we used to be. Velthra's expression was unreadable. Fear, respect, both? The Council will need to reevaluate humanity's classification, she said formally. I understand, Sarah said. But Velthra, the Kryn are still out there. They're still destroying worlds. We hurt them, but we didn't stop them. If humanity knows one thing about war, it's this. You can't win by just defending. Eventually, you have to take the fight to the enemy. What are you saying? Sarah looked directly into the camera. We're saying we'll help. We'll teach you what we know. We'll fight beside you. But the galaxy needs to understand something. We're not innocent anymore. We can't be. The Kryn made sure of that. And what are you now? Velthra asked softly. Sarah thought about her dead crew members. About the celebrations on Earth mixed with mourning for the lost. About the choice humanity had made to stand and fight. We're what we always were, she said. We're survivors. The Galactic Council chamber felt different now. The same towering walls, the same ancient seats, but the atmosphere had changed. Where there had once been comfortable complacency, now there was tension. Where there had been certainty, now there were questions. Ambassador Marcus Webb stood at the center podium, flanked by Sarah Chen and 3 human military advisors. Across from them sat representatives from 200 worlds, many of whom looked at the humans with expressions ranging from fear to hope to outright hostility. You lied to us, the Centauran delegate said. His voice was cold. You presented yourselves as innocent when you were wolves in sheep's clothing. Marcus felt anger flash through him but kept his voice level. We never lied. Everything we showed you about humanity was true. We are a peaceful species. We do value cooperation and creativity. We just didn't tell you everything about our past. A lie of omission is still a lie, another delegate snapped. Enough, Velthra said, her voice cutting through the growing argument. What matters now is not what humanity was, but what they can do now. The Kryn have taken 14 worlds since their defeat at Earth. They're adapting to human tactics. We need help. Help from warriors who deceived us? Someone asked. Sarah stepped forward. You want to talk about deception? Fine. Yes, humanity has a violent history. We fought wars for thousands of years. We got very good at killing each other. But here's what we also learned. War is hell and peace is worth any price. We chose peace. We meant it. We still mean it. She pulled up a hologram showing human history, images of ancient battles, world wars, weapons of mass destruction. This is what we left behind, Sarah continued. This is what we never wanted to be again. When we came to the stars, we hoped we'd found a better way, a galaxy where reason prevailed over violence, and for a while we believed it. The images shifted to show Kryn attacks, burning worlds, millions dead. But the galaxy isn't what we hoped it was, Sarah said quietly. The Kryn showed us that. So yes, we remembered what we knew. We used it to survive. And now we're offering to help you survive too. Why? The question came from a small, crystalline being whose voice chimed like bells. Why would you help us after we misjudged you? After we were prepared to abandon your world? Marcus answered. Because it's the right thing to do. Because if we let the Kryn win, everything we believe in dies. And because maybe, just maybe, we can teach you how to defend yourselves without becoming monsters in the process. The debate lasted for hours. Some delegates argued that humanity should be expelled from the council for their deception. Others insisted that humanity's skills were needed. In the end, a compromise was reached. Earth would lose its protected innocent status. Humanity would be granted a seat on the newly reformed War Council, and human military advisors would be assigned to train Council defense forces. But there was a condition. Every human advisor would be monitored, every tactic reviewed. The Council feared what they might be unleashing if they gave humans too much freedom. Sarah accepted the terms, though she didn't like them. Trust had been broken on both sides. It would take time to rebuild. The real work began immediately. Sarah found herself assigned to the Arxian fleet, working directly with Velthra to prepare for the next Kryn attack. The Arxians were struggling. Their ships were powerful but designed for exploration and trade. Their crews had trained in simulations, but simulation was nothing like the chaos of real combat. Show me your battle plan, Sarah asked Velthra during their first strategy session. Velthra pulled up a hologram showing ship formations. We concentrate our fleet here at the Velkara Junction. It's a critical supply route. If the Kryn take it, they cut off 15 systems from support. Sarah studied the plan. It was logical, straightforward, and exactly what the Kryn would expect. It won't work, she said. Velthra's fur rippled with frustration. Why not? We outnumber the Kryn 3-1 at this location. Because you're fighting by rules the Kryn don't follow, Sarah explained. You're thinking about protecting territory. They're thinking about destroying your ability to fight. If you mass your fleet here, they'll hit you somewhere else, somewhere you can't easily reinforce. Then where should we position our fleet? Sarah smiled. Nowhere. And everywhere. Break up into smaller groups. Keep them mobile. Make the Kryn chase you. Force them to split their forces. That goes against every principle of Arxian naval doctrine, Velthra protested. I know, Sarah said gently, but Arxian naval doctrine was written for a galaxy at peace. We need to write new doctrine. For a galaxy at war. It was hard for Velthra and her officers. Everything Sarah taught them contradicted what they knew. Concentration of force became dispersion. Direct engagement became guerrilla tactics. Honor became pragmatism. But slowly they learned. Sarah also worked with other species, the Droken, whose honor culture made them charge directly at enemies. The Vishan, who were so afraid of casualties that they refused to engage unless they had overwhelming advantage. The Trell, who couldn't understand why they should defend worlds that weren't their own. Each species needed different lessons. Sarah found herself not just teaching tactics but philosophy. War isn't about being brave, she told the Droken commander who had lost half his fleet in a reckless charge. It's about being smart. Dead heroes don't protect anyone. Avoiding casualties is important, she told the Vishan admiral who refused to engage. But if you never take risks, you'll lose everything by inches instead of all at once. Sometimes you have to gamble. The galaxy is connected, she explained to the Trell isolationists. If your neighbor's house is burning, eventually the fire reaches you. Better to help put it out early. Marcus, meanwhile, worked the political side. He met with delegates who were terrified that humanity was becoming too influential. He calmed fears, built alliances, and slowly changed the council's culture. We're not trying to take over, he said repeatedly. We're trying to survive, all of us together. But not everyone was convinced. There were whispers that humanity was using the war to gain power, that they were no different from the Kryn, just more subtle. These whispers reached Sarah during a particularly difficult training session. A group of Centauran officers had refused to follow her instructions, claiming she was trying to turn them into bloodthirsty humans. Sarah had lost her temper. You think we want this? You think we enjoyed becoming good at killing? We spent 200 years building a peaceful civilization, and in 3 months we threw it away to save you people who don't even trust us. The room had gone silent. Sarah had taken a breath, forcing her anger down. I'm sorry, she said quietly, but understand this. Every tactic I teach you, every strategy, every trick, they all came at a price. Millions of human lives over thousands of years. We paid for this knowledge in blood, ours, and now we're trying to make sure you don't have to pay the same price. One of the Centauran officers had stepped forward. Then teach us, Captain, please. That moment changed things. Word spread that human advisors weren't trying to corrupt the Council's forces. They were trying to save them. The Kryn attacked Velkara Junction 3 weeks later exactly as Sarah had predicted. But instead of finding the main Arxian fleet massed and waiting, they found small mobile groups that harassed them constantly. When the Kryn tried to secure the junction, they found it was a trap. Human-designed weapons platforms, disguised as debris, activated and tore into the Kryn supply lines. When the Kryn fleet tried to retreat, they found their escape routes blocked by Council forces that had been positioned according to human tactical doctrine. The Battle of Velkara lasted 36 hours. The Council forces lost ships and lives, but they won. For the first time since the war began, a major Kryn offensive had been stopped. The victory changed everything. Delegates who had questioned humanity's motives now requested human advisors. Species who had been fighting separately started coordinating their efforts, but Sarah knew this was just one battle. The Kryn were still strong, still dangerous, and they were learning from their defeats just as the Council was learning from humanity. They'll adapt, Sarah told Velthra after the battle. They'll find ways to counter our tactics. Then we'll adapt too, Velthra said. Thanks to you, we're remembering something we forgot. We're remembering how to fight. I just hope, Sarah said quietly, that when this is over, you also remember how to stop. Velthra looked at her friend with deep understanding. That's the difference between you and the Kryn, Sarah. You know that war is a tool, not a way of life. You remember that peace is the goal, not just victory. I hope the rest of the galaxy learns that too, Sarah said. Because the real war, she knew, wasn't just against the Kryn, it was against becoming like them. The war had been going for 8 months when the final confrontation came. The Kryn Empire, bloodied but not broken, assembled its main battle fleet above the industrial world of Krell Prime. 2,000 ships, the largest concentration of military power the galaxy had seen in 10,000 years. Against them, the United Council fleet gathered. 3,000 ships from 100 worlds, trained and led according to human military doctrine. At the head of the fleet, now designated as Supreme Commander of Combined Forces, was Sarah Chen. She stood on the bridge of the flagship Unity, looking at the tactical display. So many ships, so many lives. The weight of command pressed down on her like gravity. All fleet commanders are standing by, her communications officer reported. Awaiting your orders, Supreme Commander. Sarah had never wanted this position. She was an explorer, not a general. But the Council had insisted. The various species trusted humanity now, trusted that humans knew war better than anyone alive. They needed human leadership, Marcus had warned her. Be careful, Sarah, today you're a hero. But if you win, some will fear you. If you lose, they'll blame you. Then I'd better win, Sarah had replied. Now facing the moment of truth, she wasn't sure anymore. The Kryn fleet was positioned perfectly. They had the high ground, the better position, and the defensive advantage. Standard military doctrine said you needed 3-to-1 superiority to assault a fortified position. The Council had that, barely. But Sarah knew something about standard military doctrine. It was usually written by the victors of the last war, not the winners of the next one. Open a channel to all ships, Sarah ordered, all frequencies. I want everyone to hear this, Council and Kryn alike. The channel opened. Sarah took a breath and began. This is Supreme Commander Sarah Chen to all forces. 8 months ago, my people were classified as protected innocents. We were seen as weak, naive, and helpless. The Kryn thought we would be easy prey. They were wrong. On his flagship, Commander Zekthar listened with cold attention. He had underestimated humans once. He would not make that mistake again. His fleet was ready. His warriors eager. This time the humans would learn what true power meant. But here's the thing about humans, Sarah continued. We don't fight because we love war. We fight because we love what war threatens to destroy. Our homes, our families, our freedom. And we've learned that sometimes the only way to preserve those things is to be very good at taking them away from people who don't respect them. She paused, letting that sink in. Commander Zekthar, I know you're listening. I want you to understand something. Every species in this fleet has learned from humanity. Not just our tactics or our weapons, but our philosophy. We taught them that strength without compassion is just tyranny. That victory without honor is just murder. That war without purpose is just waste. Is she trying to negotiate? Velthra asked from the Arxian command ship. Now? No, her tactical officer said slowly. She's doing something else. Sarah's voice hardened. You've taken worlds and enslaved populations. You've killed millions because you believed might made right. Today we're going to show you that might is only part of the equation. The other part is will. And every being in this fleet has the will to stop you. She cut the channel to the Kryn and opened a new one to her fleet. All ships, execute Plan Omega. Let's teach them why you don't mess with a galaxy that's learned to work together. The Council fleet moved, but not in the way Zekthar expected. Instead of charging his position, they split into dozens of small groups. Each group began moving in different directions, spreading out across the battlefield. What are they doing? Zekthar demanded. They're dispersing? That's insane. But it wasn't insane. It was human strategy taken to its logical conclusion. The Council fleet wasn't trying to match the Kryn's strength. They were making the battlefield too big for the Kryn to control. Zekthar ordered his fleet to split up to chase the scattered groups. The moment he did, he realized his mistake. The Council groups weren't fleeing. They were positioning. Sarah watched the tactical display as the pieces moved into place. The Kryn fleet was now scattered across a huge volume of space, trying to engage multiple enemies at once. Now, Sarah said simply, from hiding places throughout the battlefield, weapons platforms activated. Not dozens, but thousands. Council forces had been seeding the area with automated defenses for weeks, disguised as debris and inactive satellites. The Kryn fleet found itself in a crossfire. Automated weapons from all directions, Council ships attacking weak points, and no way to concentrate their forces without taking devastating fire. Zekthar tried to rally his fleet, but the humans had planned for that too. Every time Kryn ships tried to regroup, Council forces would strike at their communications relays, their command ships, anything that let them coordinate. The Battle of Krell Prime became 100 smaller battles, and in small engagements, the Kryn's numerical advantage meant nothing. Their ships were powerful but isolated. The Council forces were weaker individually but worked together perfectly. Hours passed. The Kryn fleet took heavy losses. Zekthar watched his forces crumble and felt something he had never experienced before. Doubt. "Sir," his tactical officer said quietly, "we've lost 40% of our fleet. If we continue, we'll be destroyed." "The Kryn do not retreat," Zekthar snarled. "The Kryn also do not die for nothing," his officer replied. "This battle is lost, Commander. We must preserve what we can." Zekthar looked at the tactical display. His officer was right. The humans had outmaneuvered him completely. Pride warred with survival instinct. Finally, survival won. "All ships," he ordered, the words tasting like poison. "Retreat." The Kryn fleet withdrew, battered and broken. Of 2,000 ships, fewer than 1,000 escaped. The rest were destroyed or captured. Sarah watched them go and felt no joy in victory. Only relief that it was over, mixed with sorrow for all the dead on both sides. "Should we pursue?" Felthra asked over the comm. "No," Sarah said. "Let them go, we won. That's enough." The Council fleet returned to friendly space as heroes. Victory parades were planned on 100 worlds. Sarah Chen was celebrated as the greatest military mind in the galaxy. She hated it. "I don't want parades," she told Marcus. "I want to go back to exploring." "You will," Marcus promised. "But first you have one more duty." That duty came 3 weeks later. Commander Zekthar had been captured when his damaged flagship was boarded. He was brought before the Council to face judgment. The chamber was packed. Delegates called for execution, for imprisonment, for enslavement. The Kryn had caused so much suffering. Justice demanded punishment. Zekthar stood in chains, his scales dull, his eyes defiant. He expected death and would face it with pride. Instead, Sarah Chen stepped forward. "I have a proposal," she said. "Don't execute him. Don't imprison him. Send him home." The chamber erupted in protest. Felthra stood. "Sarah, he's a war criminal. He must be punished." "He's already been punished," Sarah replied. "He lost, his empire is broken. His reputation destroyed. But if we execute him, he becomes a martyr. If we imprison him, he becomes a symbol of resistance. If we send him home, he becomes something much more useful." "What?" someone asked. "A teacher," Sarah said. "Let him go back to his people and explain how they lost. Let him teach the Kryn that there's a better way than conquest." She turned to Zekthar. "You thought we were weak because we chose peace. Now you know we're strong enough to choose mercy. Go home, Commander. Tell your people what you learned." Zekthar stared at her. "Why? Why show mercy to an enemy?" "Because," Sarah said simply, "someone has to be the first to stop fighting. Someone has to show that the cycle can be broken. Humanity learned that the hard way. Maybe the Kryn can learn it too." The Council debated for days but eventually agreed. Zekthar was released and sent back to Kryn space. Many thought it was a mistake. But Sarah believed otherwise. Years later, the Kryn Empire would undergo reforms. Worlds they had conquered would be granted independence. The aggressive expansion would stop. And at the center of that change would be Zekthar himself, teaching his people the lessons he had learned. But that was in the future. For now, Sarah stood on the bridge of the Defiance, renamed back to Curiosity. Her exploration ship returned to its original purpose. "Where to, Captain?" her helmsman asked. Sarah looked at the star charts. So much galaxy to explore. So many wonders they hadn't seen yet. "Out there," she said with a smile. "Let's go discover something beautiful." The ship jumped to faster than light speed, leaving the war behind. Humanity had shown its power, had proven it could fight and win. But more importantly, it had shown it could choose when to fight and when to forgive. The galaxy had witnessed Earth's power. Now it would witness its wisdom. And perhaps, Sarah thought as stars streaked past, that was the most powerful thing of all.